Ibrim 2, Hebrews chapter 2. Now that we read everything from the first one regarding Yahushua and how he was prophesied and how he went up to sit at the right hand until Yahweh comes to put his enemies as his footstool, it says here, because of this, we have to pay more attention to what we have heard, lest we drift away. Because of this, because of the importance of the fact that Yahushua is Mashiach and scriptures talked about him, because of this, we have to pay more attention to what we have heard, lest we drift away. For if the word spoken through messengers proved to be firm, and every transgression and disobedience received a right reward, how shall we escape if we neglect so great a deliverance, which first began to be spoken by the sovereign and was confirmed to us by those that heard? Elohim also bearing witness both with signs and wonders, with various miracles and gifts of the set apart Ruach, distributed according to his own desire. So, how shall we escape, right? If the old covenant was clear and everything that was spoken and written happened, imagine how important the new covenant is, which was made through his blood. For if the word spoken through messengers proved to be firm, and every transgression and disobedience received a right reward, how shall we escape if we neglect so great a deliverance? Through Mashiach, through his blood, which first began to be spoken by the sovereign, Yahweh, and was confirmed to us by those that heard. Elohim also bearing witness, Yahweh himself giving witness through signs, as he says here, both with signs and wonders, with various miracles and gifts of the set apart Ruach spirit distributed according to his own desire. It is him who decides who gets what, and he knows why. Who gets what gift of the spirit, what ministry, and he knows that that's the best for each. And if every one of us accepts that, he or she will realize that that was exactly what they needed to be doing all along. Meaning, once you understand your role and what you were created for, then life changes pretty much. And that's how the next life will be, because everybody will be doing exactly what they were created to do. So they will all be fulfilled. For it is not to messengers that he has subjected the world to come, concerning which we speak. This is amazing because Yahweh used the Malachim. He created the Malachim, and the Malachim have lived for all human history. But they were not created for the next reality that was created for humanity. For it is not to Malachim that he has subjected the world to come, concerning which we speak. He did not put it under their authority, but under the authority of Mashiach. It is through Mashiach that we receive that next world. And that's why Mashiach said that to enter the kingdom, one must be born of water and the spirit, meaning through a woman and then through Mashiach, through the spirit given by Mashiach. The spirit is the spiritual mother. So through the earthly mother and through the heavenly or spiritual mother, the Ruach HaKodesh. That's the only way to enter the next reality. Messengers were created for this reality, to serve those who serve Mashiach, who accept Mashiach, and to be, in a way, intercessors before Mashiach came, because they took advantage of it and wanted to be worshipped by humanity, became idols, many of them. Many of them hate man, hate humanity, because they, in a way, realize the plan of Yahweh for us, how great it is. And they hated us for it, instead of doing their job happily and then receiving the possibility to enter this reality in order to enter the next one. For it is not to messengers, to Malachim, that he has subjected the world to come, concerning which we speak. But somewhere one has witnessed, saying, what is man that you remember him, or the son of man that you look after him? So this is a Psalm 8. It is said, well, like if you read it as a psalm, you just think of David, right? Saying this, like, surprise of how good and humble Yahweh is, for him to think about humanity, for him to come down to us and help us and serve us like he did through Mashiach, giving his blood for our sins, giving the example. So that is obviously one way of thinking about it. In Judaism, they think of this verse as something that the angels said to Yahweh. When Yahweh told them that he was going to give the law, the Torah, to humanity, they told him, what is man that you remember him, or the son of man that you look after him? Like, why do you care so much about him? What is so important about him? Right? Because angels think so much of themselves, and so, uh, well, those angels that rebel, of course, um, bad about us, obviously. And that is, I don't doubt, kind of a test that they went um, through seeing how they would act with humanity, because um, they were made greater, but then Yahweh had so much care of us that many of them envied us. And that's why they would ask this when Yahweh said, I will give the law to humans through Moshe, so bring the law to give it to him. They said, what is man that you remember him, or the son of man that you look after him, right? For they were in a higher dimension, in a higher level than humanity, who would sin and sin and sin. So, what is man that you remember him? And it is said in Judaism that Yahweh told him, but have you read the Torah? He says, you shall not kill. You should not do this. You should not do that. You should do this. You should do that. You should marry. And angels do not marry. So you can see through the Torah itself that it was not created for angels. It was created for humanity. So that's how they understood and ended up giving it to Moshe. What is man that you remember him, or the son of man that you look after him? You have made him a little lower than Elohim. You have made him a little lower than Elohim. It says here, according to the Greek text, messengers. However, this verse is quoted from Psalm 8:5. So some have translated it as, you have made him a little lower than angels, right? And that would be part of the reason why I mentioned how angels saw us as lesser and therefore not important in any way. But remember that the title Elohim, which is the other uh, option, or what it is believed was there originally, is a title that refers also to a type of angels. And remember that when we were created and Adam and Eve ate of the fruit of the tree of knowledge, Elohim said, they have become like us, knowing good and evil. So through the knowledge of good and evil, we became like Elohim, in the sense that we know what's good and what's bad, like judges do. And Elohim is a title that refers to judgment. However, Yahweh, it refers to mercy. That's why it was added on the second chapter of Genesis, because without his mercy, the world would not have lasted uh, very long. You have made him a little lower than Elohim. You have crowned him with esteem and respect, and set him over the works of your hands. You have put all in subjection under his feet. That's why Yahweh comes to bring his enemies to become the footstool for his feet. You have put all in subjection under his feet. For in that, this is important, for in that he put all in subjection under him, he left none that is not subjected to him. This is important. Yahweh subjected every single thing in creation to Yahushua's feet. For in that he put all in subjection under him, he left none that is not subjected to him. But now we do not yet see all subjected to him. Still, it isn't apparent, because there's still sin. There's still wickedness. There's still injustice in the world. There's still everything that is going on because we're still within human history and we need a little bit more to go for it to be apparent, to be manifested. But now we do not yet see all subjected to him. We do not see every person saying that they are subjected to Mashiach because he is waiting for people to make the choice. He gave us free will. Then it will be obvious that they should have accepted him. Yet we do not yet see all subjected to him. But we do see him who has made, but we do see him who was made for a little while lower than the Malachim, Yahushua, because of the suffering of death, crowned with esteem and respect, that by the favor of Yahweh he should taste death for everyone. So since humanity was going to taste death, he said, I will do it myself. And I will do it in one of the worst ways just to be able to open the door for you guys into the kingdom of Yahweh, the eternal life. So he gave us the key, which is his name, and his son, which is the door. Through his death, we enter into eternity. But we do see him who was made for a little while lower than the messengers. So we didn't see, remember that 2 Corinthians 5:7 says that we walk by faith, not by sight. So our true sight is our faith. Physical sight is temporal and it doesn't allow to see much. In fact, most of the time it fools you. But we do see him because through faith we see Mashiach and we know that everything is subjected to him, even though we don't see it yet in this reality, meaning yet because of time. But we do see him who was made for a little while, his life on earth, lower than the Malachim. Just like I have mentioned how Michael came from the third heaven, but was subjected to the second under Halel. So he was lower, he was made lower for a while than him. Just like David was subjected to Shaul, was lower than him, but then became greater. So Yahushua came as a man and therefore was lower than the angels, who was made for a little while lower than the messengers, the Malachim, Yahushua, because of the suffering of death, crowned with esteem and respect. Even though on this earth they crowned him with thorns and blasphemed against him and didn't respect him at all. They disrespected him in every way possible. But in the spiritual reality, he was earning all things through that act. And in the spiritual sense, it was obvious to every single reality when it was happening, because before that, they were a little bit confused. And after that, even more when they realized what had happened, that they killed the Creator himself and therefore lost the authority they had. Because of the suffering of death, crowned with esteem and respect, that by the favor of Yahweh, he should taste death for everyone. So nobody will be able to say, oh, but you didn't go through it, you don't know what it is. He himself came and gave us the best example possible. For it was fitting for him, because of whom all are and through whom all are. First and last, because of whom, through whom. For it was fitting for him, because of whom all are and through whom all are. We all exist because of him and for him, for his will. In bringing many sons to esteem, to make the prince of their deliverance perfect through sufferings. To make the prince of their deliverance perfect through sufferings. So Yahushua completed everything that he had to fulfill with his death. So to make the prince, who will become king, of their deliverance, salvation, perfect, complete through sufferings, his sufferings. But also remember the word prince is similar, or what we see here, to what we have seen in Daniel 9 when Yahweh says that the prince will manifest, Mashiach Nagid, the anointed prince, Mashiach Nagid, and then Mashiach would be cut, and then the Nagid would manifest. So, although sadly in Christianity that chapter has been interpreted in a very wrong way, we have seen how Mashiach refers to the first and Nagid to the last. We see in Isaiah 63 when he comes in red as king, he is saved by his arm, meaning he's saved by what Yahushua did. So Yahushua came to give salvation, deliverance through his sufferings in order to be able for the Nagid, the prince, to fulfill what he needs to fulfill and become perfect, for we will be perfect in the day of Mashiach, meaning the day of the transformation, in the case of the two witnesses when they resurrect. To make the prince of their deliverance, also the word there could be Sar, and I mean in Hebrew, could be Nagid, could be Sar. If it's Nagid, it refers to the last. If it's Sar, it refers to Mikael, who manifests as the last. So at the end, it connects with both. Obviously, first, always Mashiach. I just found interesting that it mentions that term, that title, to make the prince of their deliverance perfect through sufferings. Yahushua, through his sufferings, makes the last, and then the few, who are the sons, makes them perfect. For both he who sets apart and those who are being set apart are all of one. For both he who sets apart and those who are being set apart, Yahweh and his people, Yahushua and the congregation, for both he who sets apart and those who are being set apart are all of one, for which reason he is not ashamed to call them brothers. So we see that Yahushua himself became our brother, for he came as the son to make us children of Yahweh. But also refers to how the last comes and becomes the firstborn of the 144,000. Therefore, obviously also a brother, for which reason he is not ashamed to call them brothers, since he made everything with a purpose, and since he died for us, that shows that he has no issue, no problem, or shame with calling us brothers, saying, I shall announce your name to my brothers. This is another prophecy in Psalm 45:17. So David was prophesying about Mashiach as he did in John 17, like we see here, 17:6, and John 17:26, when Yahushua says, I have proclaimed your name to the men that you have given me, and I will do it again, doing the second manifestation. I shall announce your name to my brothers. So it shows the importance of the name and the fact that Yahushua had to announce the name. Why? Because the Pharisees had taken it away. I shall announce your name to my brothers. In the midst of the congregation, I shall sing praise to you. Right? Like he did in on Pesach during the dinner. And he told them, he sang the Psalms that happened in a literal way right there. And obviously this fulfills also with the last, for this was said by David, and David is a representation of the last. In the midst of the congregation, I shall sing praise to you. He comes to gather the congregation. And again, I shall put my trust in him. And again, see, I and the children whom Elohim gave me. This is important because here we see that it says, I shall announce your name to my brothers. But now it says, and the children you gave me, and the children whom Elohim gave me. So he presents first as son, therefore having brothers, but then as father, having children. because he first came as the Son and then comes as the Father. The Son gives testimony of the Father. The Father comes and gives testimony of the Son. So that is how he would come as first and last, Son and Father. First as the Son to become the seed for others to be able to become children, and then as the Father to gather the chosen few who will be the children of Yahweh, and therefore spiritual children in the sense that he gives them the doctrine. Therefore, since the children share in flesh and blood, he himself similarly shared in the same, right? He came in flesh and blood, so that by means of his death, he might destroy him, having the power of death. That is the enemy, Hasatan, the accuser. Devil is accuser, but devil pretty much comes from the Greek. So, therefore, since the children share in flesh and blood, since we would be children, and well, when it comes to the few, we have seen in other books how if we accept Mashiach, is because we were already his children way before. The children of Yahweh came down and Mashiach came to rescue us, redeem us from flesh and blood. Um, so, since the children share in flesh and blood, since those who are his children were part of this reality, having flesh and blood, he himself similarly shared in the same. He also had flesh and blood, so that by means of his death, he might destroy him, having the power of death. So through his death, he killed death and Samael, because he says having the power of death. Through Samael came death. So remember that Mashiach fulfilled all the commandments. So according to the law, he had to live by the commandments that he had fulfilled. But the enemy with the Pharisees worked to kill him because they were envious of him and other things against him. So they decided to kill him even though he had fulfilled all of the Torah. So Yahweh raised them from the death because scripture says, if you fulfill this, you live. Satan killed him, so now Satan got out of a job because he killed the one that he shouldn't have killed because he didn't deserve death. According to the law, he was supposed to live by his actions, his fulfillment of the commandments, so that by means of his death, he might destroy him, having the power of death. He who had the power of death had it because of the Torah, accusing he who sins. So when Yahushua dies without sin, takes away the law from the hands of the accuser, because it is clear he doesn't use it well. Like cops in this reality, and many of the judges who are bribed, are bought, and all of that. So that, let's say it again, so that by means of his death he might destroy him, having the power of death, that is the devil or Hasatan, and deliver those who throughout life were held in slavery by fear of death. And deliver those who throughout life were held in slavery by fear of death. There are so many who are slaves of their fear of death. And because of that, they don't live. And some of them, because of that, won't get to live eternally. But obviously, those who come to Mashiach should give that fear to him, for he already went through it, and then he will take it from you. That fear of death, because now death is just to fall asleep, to enter into the next reality where we will live eternally without any of the pain and things that are in this reality. And deliver those who throughout life were held in slavery by fear of death. Many of the religions, even in Christianity, keep their sheep, their people, in slavery to those false doctrines, to those false or wrong dogmas, because their fear of death takes them to those churches, to those congregations, to those religions, and some take advantage of that fear that people have, giving them falsehood in order to keep them for them. For doubtless he does not take hold of messengers, but he does take hold of the seed of Abraham. Because we see how angels keep on falling, rebelling throughout history. That's why we are in a battle against authorities, principalities, and more entities in the spirit realm. For doubtless he does not take hold of messengers, but he does take hold of the seed of Abraham. That is Mashiach and those who believe in him. So, in every way, and I say that because it is one seed. So, it is the seed of Abraham that was Mashiach who had to come. And when he came, now all of those who get a hold of him are branches from that seed that became the root of the tree. So, in every way, he had to make, so in every way, he had to be made like his brothers in order to become a compassionate and trustworthy high priest. So you see how it says high priest now? And even the word prince could be a term used for a priest, just in case, because we are a kingdom of priests. But my point is that we need to read carefully when he mentions kingship or the priesthood. Like in this case, yeah, is now mentioning the high priest. And that is the role that Mashiach came to fulfill, to become the high priest according to the order of Melchizedek. So in every way, he had to be made like his brothers in order to become a compassionate, meaning in order for him to understand what we go through, what we went through, etc., and trustworthy high priest in matters related to Yahweh, to make atonement for the sins of the people. He made atonement with his own blood. But it is interesting that he's the high priest and he mentions atonement. Atonement has to do with Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement. So on Yom Kippur, the high priest would sacrifice a male goat for Yahweh that was fulfilled by Yahushua HaMashiach. And then he would sacrifice an ox and a ram. So an ox and a ram, which represent the two witnesses. The witness sent through Ephraim and then Eliyahu. So Yahushua had to become the high priest in order for the two witnesses to be sacrificed as the remaining sacrifices of Yom Kippur. Just like Mashiach died on Pesach, on Matzot, now the last and the witness Eliyahu will die on Yom Kippur to make atonement, to make Kippur for the sins of the people. For in what he had suffered, himself being tried, he is able to help those who are tried. So, for in what he had suffered, himself being tried, so through that excruciating pain that he went through, that he suffered for us, he was tried and he remained until death and then was resurrected. So, by him going through that, he's able to help us go through anything less or similar to what he went through. He's able to help those who are tried. So that's wonderful, and may he help us in every trial and tribulation. And that's how that chapter ends.